All right, testing. Is that on? All right. Good to see everyone this morning. If you have your Bible, you can open to Joshua 24. Joshua chapter 24. Appreciate Stafford Mitchell. I don't know if he's here. Sometimes he's up in the sound booth. I don't know if he's there, but he filled in for me last Sunday morning so that my family and I could be at Polishing the Pulpit. And it was a great week. And we spent time with family. Saw a lot of friends, old co-workers who's here this morning. I appreciate, good to see Dave and Luann this morning. I was not calling you old, Dave, by the way. Just said old co-workers, ex-co-workers. Let's say it that way. I don't know. Friends, family, a lot of lessons, lectures. Kristen was able to go to some women's only lessons, and I took care of the boys. And it just a good. If you've never been to Polishing the Pulpit, it's the closest thing to heaven on earth. It's just a just like worship, Bible class this morning. But imagine doing it for a week. And, it's just a great time. Great time is my point. So, anyway, Joshua 24. So we're in the last chapter. And so that brings me to have to make a decision what we're going to do starting next Sunday. For the purpose of organization and staying on schedule, I need to make it until the beginning of next quarter, which I believe starts in October. Now, there's nothing that says I have to do that, but again, for the sake of just organization and the other classes and the individuals that are in those classes, if they would like to be in this study and they're not able to because they're in that class and then we did not start. So for the sake of organization and starting when other classes are scheduled to stop, it works a little bit better. So what we may do is we'll finish chapter 24 this morning and we'll close out the book of Joshua. And then there's so much with regards to the Hebrew history, what happened before they conquered the land of Canaan. There's so much that we could talk about with the Hebrew history, the Israelite history. So we may backtrack and look at some things that we did not have time to look at as we went through the book, maybe try to make some connections somewhere. But let me also throw this out there. If you have my cell phone, if you don't have my cell phone, it should be in the bulletin or my church work email. If there's something within the book of Joshua that you have a question about, text me, email me, we can talk about that question. And we may carry that for the month of September, going back into the book of Joshua, re-examining some applications or some questions, and then that will carry us to a new quarter. And so then, next quarter, naturally, we'll pick up in the book of Judges, because when you go to Judges chapter 1, and if you look at verse 1, Joshua, the book of Joshua, ends with the death of Joshua. So you go to the book of Judges, chapter 1, verse 1, now after the death of Joshua. So Judges picks up right after the death of Joshua. So it's a natural segue really into the book of Judges. So that will be our next study, is the book of Judges. So with all that to say, for the next 4 weeks or so, we will re-examine the book of Joshua, maybe highlight some things that stand out in the book if you have any questions, and then our next study will go into the book of Judges. But again, next quarter we'll have 3 adult classes, and this will be one, and we'll have 2 others, and so we'll get that out, information, and you can make a decision what you would like to study then. All right, with that said, if you have your handout, And I realized this morning when I was printing this handout, I don't think that I gave you chapter 23. I've given you up to chapter 23. So there may be some that next week I'll go reprint or print and pass out if you don't have those chapters. I don't think you have Joshua 23, and so I'll print that for you next week. But Joshua 24. Again, as we get into the chapter, as we look at Israel conquering the land of Canaan, we're looking at about 7 years here. About 7 years. Some say 5 to 7 years. Probably about 7 years here that it took them from Joshua 1 to Joshua 24 to go throughout the land of Canaan, to conquer, to drive out the pagans. They did not drive all the nations out. That'll be an issue later. God told them to to drive all the nations out, the pagan nations, everyone out, because that'll be an issue later. In fact, when we go through Joshua 24 here, Joshua is really going to challenge the Israelites. You have to make a decision who you're going to serve. Are you going to serve God, Jehovah God, or are you going to serve idols, lower G gods? You're going to serve the gods of the pagan people. So one of the ways that you can easily not be influenced to worship these idols is to drive out these pagan people. Don't even let that influence be around you. Drive them out. Well, they did not. That will influence them later on, but Joshua's going to challenge them. And so we look at the time here. Joshua in chapter 23, verse 1, he is old. Joshua 23, verse 1, now it came to pass a long time after the Lord had given rest to Israel from all their enemies round about, that Joshua was old, advanced in years. And so he's 110 years old or so. Here, 110, he's old, and he has been a faithful servant of the Lord. He has been a courageous leader for Israel and has successfully, with the aid of God, led Israel to conquer the land of Canaan. We look at the characters. Joshua 24, we have some characters that are mentioned here. Joshua, of course, the leader of Israel. This is part of his farewell speech, and then we will read about his death. We have the Israelites here. We have the leaders of Israel that are gathered together. You have the son of Aaron, who is now the high priest of Israel. He is Eleazar. The first high priest of Israel was Aaron, the brother of Moses. Aaron, his son Eleazar, the high priest. And then Joseph. Joseph is mentioned. Now, he's no longer alive, but he's mentioned here. So he's one of the characters that we'll mention and read about here. Joseph was the son of Jacob and Rachel, and God elevated him to become a great ruler in Egypt. If we remember that, he was sold into slavery by his brothers. And we could, if we had time, and maybe we will the next couple of weeks, go back and re-look at some of Joseph's life and history and death, because there was a promise made to Joseph that he would not be buried in Egypt, but that his bones would be taken and buried elsewhere, and we'll read about that. So those are the characters that we read in Joshua chapter 24. Well, where are we? So where's the location? Joshua's address to the people of Israel in Joshua 24 took place in a location known as Shechem. We'll read that in verse 1 as they gather together, and we'll talk more about that. And so Joshua was buried in Timnath-Serah in the hill country of Ephraim, which was part of the country that he inherited. So that's just a little bit of a summary of Joshua 24. And so then the second page, or the back of the page that you have, is an outline. We're going to walk through that as we go through the text. Let's think about the first 13 verses. Again, this is part of Joshua's farewell speech. Perhaps he knows he's about to die. And so if you know that your life is coming to an end, and you've been this influential leader to so many people, a couple million people, you've been this leader influencing them, leading them, commanding them. You've brought about God's promise to the Israelites, the promise that he promised all the way back to Abraham. You've been this leader. Now you know that your time on earth is done. It's over. You're about to die. What would you say? What would you say to the people, to the leaders of the tribes, as you rally them together, you gather them together in one place? What would you say to them? Well, exactly what Joshua does say, really, to encourage them. Now, Joshua cannot make them or force them to serve God, but he can encourage them, and he can lead by example, as he's done his entire life, and he'll make a statement that we are familiar with here as we read Joshua 24. He'll make a statement about his house, him and his house, their decision. So he's going to gather these leaders together. He's going to question them. He's going to encourage them to remain faithful to God. Now, as he gets into that speech, and let's dive in, as he gets into that, we notice on our outline that the first 13 verses is dedicated to Joshua recounting Israel's history. And he's going to walk through a couple of major points here with their history, where they came from. Beginning in verse 1, Joshua 24, "Then Joshua gathered all the tribes of Israel to Shechem, and called the elders of Israel for their heads, for their judges, for their officers." So these are the leaders of each tribe to come together. And they presented themselves before God. Verse 1. So there they are. There's Joshua, the heads, the judges, the leaders, the officers of the tribes of Israel, and they're there before God. Verse 2. "And Joshua said to all the people, 'Thus says the Lord God of Israel.'" So notice that. Joshua is not really speaking of his own accord. He's speaking from God. He's speaking what God, through Joshua, has to say to Israel. "And Joshua said to all the people, 'Thus says the Lord God.'" God has been faithful to Joshua. Joshua has been faithful to God. He's obeyed God. He has spoken for God. Even going all the way back to Joshua chapter 1. When God commanded Joshua to speak to the people this and that and to do this, Joshua spoke what the Lord spoke. Joshua has truly been a faithful servant. In fact, with that thought in mind, before we go any further, it's not really described this way that I know, and maybe I just forgot. But in Joshua chapter 1, for Moses, Joshua 1 verse 1, after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord. So Moses is described as the servant of the Lord, and surely 100% Joshua could be described that way as well. "And Joshua said to all the people, 'Thus says the Lord God of Israel, your fathers,'" so these are their ancestors, "your fathers, including Terah." Now, if you're reading ahead, you know who that is. But if you haven't read ahead, hold on. Who is Terah? Abraham's father, right? Abraham's father. So, your fathers, these are the ancestors, including Terah, the father of Abraham and the father of Nahor, dwelt on the other side of the river in old times, and they served other gods. So notice that for just a moment. We have a reference to Terah here, the father of Abraham. Now, I tried to do a little bit of research on Terah this week, not a lot, just a little, to see what I could find. I did not find a whole lot. I don't know if there's a whole lot that we really know. There's some Jewish traditions about Terah, but there's not a whole lot that I came across in my personal study. And maybe that's something we'll dive into the next coming weeks as we have time, maybe to find some information on Terah. But notice what is said about Terah in particular. What does it say? He's a pagan. He's a pagan, right? He worshipped lowercase g gods, idols. He's an idol worshiper. And so you look at Terah, the father of Abraham. It mentions that they were on the other side of the river. Now, let's talk about that for a moment, too. And let me find myself in my notes. So, the other side of the river is a reference to the river Euphrates, where Abraham and his forefathers lived. Abraham and his forefathers lived. In fact, does anybody have the American Standard Version? What versions do y'all have? If not, I can look it up. Not that it matters that much, but just this is the way it translates that verse. The American Standard Version. Compared to the King James. So let's start there. Who has the King James? What does your translation say in the King James? Anybody have King James? Okay. So when you read the King James, it mentions the other side of the flood in old time, right? Well, that's a little bit difficult to understand. What does that mean, the phrase on the other side of the flood? Well, then you turn to a translation like, well, I'm reading from New King James or the American Standard here. And I took your father Abraham from beyond the river. From beyond the river. Again, that would be the river Euphrates. River Euphrates. Going back to verse 3, then I took your father Abraham from the other side of the river, led him throughout all the land of Canaan, and multiplied his descendants, and gave him Isaac. Isaac, the son of Abraham and Sarah, the son of their old age, right? The son of promise. And so we could think about Abraham and Sarah and their son Isaac. We could think about when God told Abraham to take his only son Isaac and to do what? Yeah, take him to the mountain. I'll show you. God says, I want you to take your son. I want you to sacrifice him. They go to the place and they build the altar. And the knife's in his hand. And Abraham's ready to do it. He draws that knife back. And God stops him. But Abraham, we have mentioned here the father of Abraham briefly. He worshipped other gods on the other side of the river, Euphrates, where they lived. It took Abraham, multiplied his descendants, gave him a son named Isaac. Verse 4, we have a continuation of that lineage. To Isaac I gave two twins. Who are they? Two sons. Jacob and Esau. Right? Jacob and Esau. We can think about those two brothers. We could think about which brother is it that deceived the other? Jacob deceived Esau? Was it? I'm thinking off the top of my head in the moment right now. So Jacob, was it Esau was the one that was hairy, had the blessing or the birthright, right? And anyway, all of that took place with Jacob and his brother Esau, and so we can think about the history there. Again, some of this may be what we need to kind of go back and look at starting next week as we've finished the book. And we can back up and look at some more of this history, this Hebrew history again. And so verse 4 again, to Isaac I gave Jacob and Esau, so we're familiar with them. To Esau I gave the mountains of Seir to possess, but Jacob and to his children, they went down to Egypt. Jacob, let's think about his name change for just a moment. Now he's referred to here as Jacob, but it was changed to Israel. When was Jacob's name changed? When he don't think that was no. It might be, I don't know how close, no, I don't think so. It was after he wrestled with God, right? Or a messenger from God, or was it God? Can't remember the details there. But he wrestles with a messenger from God, and after that moment, Jacob's name is then changed to Israel. And that's why we know them as the Israelites. They will come through Jacob, Israel, the Israelite nation, coming through Jacob, the son of Isaac, the son of Abraham. So we see just the lineage here. We see the line here. And so going back to verse 4, but Jacob and his children went down into Egypt. And so just a couple of verses here thinking about the Israelites being in captivity, slavery in Egypt. Verse 5, also I sent Moses and Aaron, and I plagued Egypt. Now again, this is God talking. And I plagued Egypt according to what I did among them. Afterward, I brought you out. Think about the plagues, right? So just think about what Moses or Joshua is saying here. I imagine those listening to Joshua here are recounting this in their mind. They're listening to Joshua's farewell speech, what he's saying. He took them all the way back to Abraham. He even references Terah and Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Esau. And Jacob and his descendants went down into Egypt. And they spent these many years in Egypt in slavery. And Moses, we're familiar with Moses. His mother put him into the river, found by Pharaoh's daughter, raised as an Egyptian, runs away, flees Egypt, kills the guard, flees, runs away, finds God in the burning bush. The bush is burning, but it's not being consumed. Right? And God says to Moses, I need you, Moses, to go to Egypt. No, I just came from there. I'm not going back there. No, I need you to go back to Egypt. I need you to bring my people out. They've been in captivity. I need you to bring them out. Well, I'm not a good speaker. All of this. Well, I'm not a good speaker. Well, I'm going to send Aaron, your brother, with you. He's going to be a spokesman for you. All this, Moses goes, Aaron, they go to Egypt. Plague after plague, 10 plagues. All of this history. Verse 5, and I sent Moses and Aaron and plagued Egypt according to what I did among them. Afterward, after all of that, Pharaoh finally says, at least for a moment, Pharaoh says, take your people and leave. Go, get out. He might have been overwhelmed after the death of his son. The death angel came. He has a change of mind later, and he pursues Egypt, or the Israelites, and we'll read that here as we continue on. God says, I brought you out. Verse 6, then I brought your fathers out of Egypt, and you came to the sea. Well, what sea is that? The Red Sea. The Red Sea. That's the first sea that they will cross as God parts the water and they cross on dry ground. And Pharaoh and his chariot army, they're pursuing closely behind. They also, in the book of Joshua, remember, they crossed over the Jordan. They've crossed over the Jordan. And so God has, with the Red Sea and the Jordan, He's parted it. And they've crossed over from one side to another a couple of times here. In fact, you remember, I believe it was Rahab. Rahab, just to recall to your mind. I believe it was Rahab in Joshua chapter 6 Joshua chapter 5, I think, when the spies are in Jericho and there is a conversation with Rahab, and Rahab basically says, and we've heard about what your God has done. We've heard about how you crossed the Red Sea. We've heard about all of that your God has done, and all the kings that you have conquered. And so surely these are mighty works that no other little lowercase g gods have ever done. Imagine being a pagan person and you've worshipped this God, so-called God, for your entire life. You've worshipped this fake, not real God your entire life. And you've cut yourself, and you've bled, and you've begged, and you've offered human sacrifices. You've done all this outrageous service to these gods. And this God's never done anything for you because He's not real. Okay, all right. Appreciate that comment, for sure. So let me correct something, and I remember this as I was listening to the comment. I said Rahab was Jericho is in Joshua 6, right? The Israelites conquering Jericho. The spies and that conversation with Rahab is in Joshua 2. So I needed to back up a couple chapters. So if you go to Joshua chapter 2, the spies are in Jericho, and they're spying it out, and they find Rahab, verse 10, so this is Joshua 2, verse 10, for we have heard how the Lord, this is Rahab, dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt. And what you did to the two kings of the Amorites, who were on the other side of the Jordan, Sihon and Og, when you utterly destroyed, right? So Rahab says, we heard about that. We heard about that. And so, again, you have to imagine being someone who has never worshipped a God that's done that. And Rahab refers to the fact that the people of Jericho became afraid because of that. They knew they were coming, or the Israelites were coming that direction for them, perhaps. All right, hey, we got to pick up some ground. Verse 6, then I brought your fathers out of Egypt, and you came to the sea, and the Egyptians pursued you, pursued your fathers with chariots and horsemen to the Red Sea, right? So Pharaoh, his army, pursued, tried to bring them back. So they cried out to the Lord, and he put darkness between you and the Egyptians, brought the sea upon them as the Israelites got to the other side, the Egyptians in the middle of the sea. Walls of water collapsed around them and covered them. And your eyes saw, notice that phrase. I would even highlight that in my Bible. Your eyes saw. And that's what's so amazing to me sometimes for the Israelites. The Israelites, they saw God do some magnificent things, crazy, mind-blowing miracles. They saw it. And then they have the audacity to complain, to build idols, oftentimes question and fall away and go back into captivity because of their unfaithfulness. But Joshua says, your eyes saw what I did. Or God says through Joshua, your eyes saw what I did in Egypt. Then you dwelt in the wilderness a long time. And I think that's funny. I would highlight that in my Bible too. At least that's the way it's translated. Coming right here in just a moment. That's the way it's translated. But that reads funny to me. It just says, and you dwelt in the wilderness a long time. Yeah, you did, Israel. You dwelt in the wilderness a long time. It doesn't say 40 years, which that's a long time. It just says you dwelt in the wilderness a long time. Long enough for that generation that was unfaithful to die off. New generation, not everyone, those that were faithful lived, but the unfaithful died out in the wilderness. New generation, but you dwelt in the wilderness a long time. Yes, Brother Jim. Mm-hmm. God has all the children, and He loves us dearly. But for us to reap the benefits of Him and His hand of mercy upon us, we have to be obedient to the God of heaven. That's right. Yeah. That's right. Hey, let me throw a comment. If you heard his comment. But you mentioned early on that we were not there when all this was happening, but we're reading about it, and so that just made me think about Romans 15:4, that whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, and so I would connect that in my thoughts and my notes. If you're taking notes, whatsoever things there were written aforetime, Romans 15:4. I appreciate that comment. Yes, absolutely. Let's pick back up verse 8. And I brought you into the land of the Amorites who dwelt on the other side of the Jordan, and they fought with you, but I gave them into your hand. Notice, God says, I gave them to you. I gave them to you. I defeated your enemies. I defeated your enemies. Remember back in Joshua chapter 7, the sin of Achan, when they conquered and destroyed the land of Jericho, and Achan took of the accursed things that God said, you shall not. When that happened, and there was sin in the camp, and they tried to go up against the people of Ai, and because of the sin, God said, watch this, He's not with them. and 32, 36 people died, 30-something men died. Ai drove Israel out. So the point is, when Israel, at least even just one person, was not faithful to God, they did not conquer the enemies. God says, I gave them to you. So when Joshua and Israel was faithful to God, God allowed them to conquer these nations and the land. Verse 8 again, and I brought you into the land of the Amorites who dwelt on the other side of the Jordan, and they fought with you, but I gave them into your hand that you might possess their land. And I destroyed them from before you. Then Balak, the son of Zippor, king of Moab, arose to make war against Israel, and sent and called Balaam, the son of Beor, to curse you. But I would not listen to Balaam. Therefore I continued to bless you. So I delivered you out of his hand. Then you went over the Jordan and came to Jericho. We're familiar with that. We studied that. You crossed over the Jordan. You came to Jericho on the west side of the Jordan. And the men of Jericho fought against you. Right? They did. The men of Jericho fought against you. Remember Jericho? They marched around the walls once a day for 6 days. On the seventh day, they marched around 7 times, blew the trumpets, screamed, yelled, walls collapsed. At Polish in the Pulpit, and I tried to go back and find it. I saw something somewhere, a video, and maybe that's something else I'll get into this week, in the next couple of weeks. There was something I saw somewhere, and it didn't register at the time, but it was a video talking about some archaeology, some discoveries. Now, we have some brothers in the kingdom, the brotherhood, Kyle Moore. Some of y'all may be familiar with Kyle Moore. He does a lot of trips over to the Bible lands, does a lot of studies in archaeology and land. Anyway, a lot of good stuff. And something I saw suggested that they have found, and I need to look more into it because I don't really know, they have found what they believe to be Jericho and the wall of Jericho. And that's interesting that they have found it. Again, I need to look more into it. But what I read or saw in this video was that if this is the wall, there is one section of that wall that has not fallen. Now, why would that be? Why would that be? He said it in the video. Why might that be? Who did God spare? Rahab. So it's interesting to think that perhaps when Israel conquered Jericho and the wall fell down, and she lived in the wall, along the wall somewhere, and she put a ribbon in the window, a scarlet cord, that God, through his power and providence, I guess, or his power, the wall around Jericho fell except where Rahab was. It's an interesting, I'm sure that's similar to what had to happen. But anyway, that's what I'm thinking about as we read here. You went to Jericho. Jericho fought against you. Also the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Girgashites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. But I delivered them into your hand. Again, God said, I gave them, I delivered them. I sent the hornet before you, which drove them out from before you. Also the 2 kings of the Amorites, but not with your sword or with your bow. I have given you a land. Now this is the final verse of this section, verse 13. Now I have given you a land which you did not labor, and cities which you did not build, and you dwell in them, and you eat of the vineyards and olive groves which you did not plant. Is it a land flowing with milk and honey? Well, not literally, but it's a good land. It's a rich land. It's a fertile land. It's a land that they will possess that has vineyards and olive groves. It's a land that's prepared by someone else, and now they're living there. And it's a good land. And God gave it to them. God said, this is my promise, that I would give you this land, and I've given you this land now. So that's that end of that section. We have 4 minutes left. I don't know if we'll get to the end of this chapter. If not, no big deal. We'll pick up next Sunday. But that brings us to that second section where Joshua, with his famous statement about serving the Lord, he really challenges the leaders of Israel. Who will you serve? Who's going to be your God? The actual God of heaven, Jehovah God, or the God of your fathers? Even the God of the father of Abraham, Terah, when he worshipped idols. Who's going to be your God? And it's interesting as we read, and I'm going to read until our time is up. It's interesting when you read that Joshua's challenging these leaders, who are you going to serve? And these leaders are like, hey, we're going to serve God. And Joshua's like, yeah, right. Almost in a way. He's like, will you really? It's almost like he's challenging them. The leaders are like, yeah, we're going to serve God. He's like, but are you really going to? Are you really? It's one thing to say it. It's another thing to do it. So are you really going to serve God? So let's read, and then we'll end in 3 minutes. Verse 14, now therefore, fear the Lord. Now something else that I would think about, depending on your translation. The form of the word serve, served, serving. A form of the word serve is used, if I remember correctly, 16 times in this chapter alone. 16 times Joshua uses the word serve, served, or serving. Now therefore, fear the Lord, serve Him in sincerity and in truth, and put away the gods, lowercase g, which your father served on the other side of the river and in Egypt. Serve, there's 2, the Lord. And if it seems evil to you to serve the Lord, choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, there's 3, whether the gods of your fathers, lowercase idol gods, served that were on the other side of the river, or the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you dwell. That's why they were to eradicate all of them. Don't let the influence of them be around you. But as for me and my house, here's what Joshua says, my influence, my example, my decision. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. So the people answered and said, now here's the people responding back, and the people answered and said, far be it from us that we should forsake the Lord to serve, there's 4, other gods. For the Lord our God is He who brought us and our fathers up out of the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage, who did those great signs in our sight and preserved us in all the way that we went and among all the people through whom we passed. And the Lord drove out from before us all the people, including the Amorites who dwelt in the land. We also will serve, there's another one, the Lord, for He is our God. And Joshua's like, let me challenge that. Let me challenge it. But Joshua said to the people, you cannot serve the Lord. For He is a holy God. He is a jealous God. He will not forgive your transgressions nor your sins. If you forsake the Lord and serve foreign gods, then He will turn and do you harm and consume you after He has done you good. After He has done you good. Let's read the verse. And the people said to Joshua, no, but we will serve the Lord. So Joshua said to the people, you are witnesses against yourselves that you have chosen to serve the Lord, have chosen the Lord for yourselves to serve Him. I'm going to end there. It's 9:45. If you continue reading, Joshua is going to take a stone and set it up as a memorial outside of the tabernacle as he hears this confession from the leaders of Israel that they will serve God. He sets up this stone as a memorial to that confession, and then beginning in verse 29 to 33 is the death of Joshua. We'll pick up there next Sunday. We'll just conclude that, and then we'll just see where else our study takes us. But again, if you have any thoughts or questions, If you have any thoughts or questions, reach out to me. Text me this week, and we'll go from there. All right. Thanks for your attention.